What's up, folks? Today we are doing a Blender tutorial. I'm going to be focusing mostly on modeling, and I will probably post a follow-up video on shading and rendering. But I mean, this is mostly for Matthew and Melissa, and I know you guys working on the MEMS, so I figure I would demonstrate like how to construct a simple MEMS, and then you could run with it. So let's go over what Blender presents us. I mean, if you just open it up, you have something like this, and I've already deleted the standard stuff that is in the scene, but if you load up a scene, you automatically get this camera, this cube, and this light, right? Well, you're probably already wondering, how did I select the light? Well, it's important to note that in the key map, which you probably cannot see, but if you open up Blender Preferences and you go to key map, I'm using Blender 27X. Now, standard is just Blender, but I started using this a while ago and I got comfortable with the old key map, and thank God they still kept it in. So I also recommend going to add-ons, and I'm going to list all of the add-ons that I have enabled. And that's extra objects, Blender Kit, you don't need that, Bolt Factory, extra mesh objects, extra curve objects, import export STL, 3D print toolbox. Those are all really good to have. Also, I think Node Wrangler is a good one, but you probably, I don't know if you're using nodes yet, but either way. So yes, to select stuff, I right click to change the cursor location. That's that thing right there. I left click, and A to select all or deselect all. If you want to scale, you can press S and drag. Grab is to move, and R is to rotate. Now, obviously, those are pretty, like, rotate how? I mean, well, normally it's to your viewport, but I think that's what this is for here. You can make it local, global, whatever. So I think what happens is if you rotate this, let's say you want to rotate this on the Z-axis and you hit RZ. Normally, yeah, you can rotate on the Z-axis. If you hit Z again, it changes axis to the local axis of the object. So that's something that's helpful to note. So yeah, it does retain some of the object's details, and you can access that if you just know how. I think that might be what this transform orientations is for, but I don't use that much. Sometimes I just press Z twice, and that's helpful enough for me. Either way, if you want to grab something and move it along an axis, you just press X, Y, or Z. Same thing with rotating, and even scaling. So that's cool. So that's the basic transforms. If you press 0, you can actually get a view of the camera, but I don't have a 0 key on my keyboard. So we're in object mode right now. If we want to modify the vertices of this square and edit, we have to go to edit mode. So we would press tab to do that, and that would bring us to edit mode, and then we can select vertices and do the whole thing like we were doing. And excuse me, that's very helpful. There's a lot of tools over here. The important ones are the measure, all right, units of millimeters. Extrude region, that's same thing as E. So right now over here, this toolbar is you can either select vertices, edges, and I just went into wireframe there so you could see the edges, and faces as well. So you can select entire faces. So depending on what this is on, and if you select a face and you go to edges, the edges will be selected for the face. So good. Now, if I wanted to extrude this, I would just press E, and it automatically extrudes on the normal vector of the face. But I can easily change that to a global vector by pressing Z or X twice. And that basically, when you press Z twice or X twice, it's basically cycling between the global and local coordinate system. Inset faces is an interesting one. But it's basically the same thing as if you, so you can extrude, press escape, or press S, and then that's an inset face. You can even extrude that inward, and boom, you have a cavity. You know, bevel is nice. Bevel is a good tool to have. The way I bevel, I don't use this actually, is I select all the edges that I want to bevel, and I just go spacebar, which allows you to search through a bunch of stuff. So if you're trying to do something you're not sure, spacebar, search it up. Very good way to go. And bevel. And boom, you can bevel your object. Pretty cool. This is loop cut. You can do it with Control R, and you can scroll up or down to increase the number of loops. Pretty helpful. And then hit escape to position them in the center. Knife is like loop cut, but not as good. And I don't really use any of these. So yeah, that's most of the stuff that I use hand modeling. But the real power comes with the modifiers, which we'll get to. Now this is the scene. Obviously there's a light, a cube, and a camera. And as you get more objects, you'll see them there, and you can name them and organize them and keep track of them. But, oh, I forgot to mention, this is the pivot point. You can actually select custom pivot points. So if I select this cube and I want to rotate it, you know, it rotates at its center, which is actually the active point of the object. See, if I move it over, the object still has this dot right here. And that dot is important. That's the center of the object. So if I want to rotate it, it still rotates around the dot. Okay? And that is set here. That is the median point of the object. The object has a center that is defined by that point. So if you select multiple objects, the median point is going to be the average of the centers, which is those dots. And so we can go into edit mode, select all the vertices and rotate. And that will be truly at the center of the object, because it's weighing all the vertices and finding the actual center. Whereas here it was just using the object center, which is defined as that point right there. There's also a 3D cursor, and you can set that to be wherever. And in the console you can search cursor, you type in cursor, and there's all these things to do with the cursor. You can snap it to active, to the world of origin, to a point that you select, all sorts of cool things. And so with that, you can rotate it around the cursor. And if you change the cursor location, it'll still rotate it around it. Cool. There's also other ones like median point, active element, individual origins. Now that one's cool because Shift D to duplicate. All right. And if I select both and I want to rotate them, they rotate together. But if I select individual origins, suddenly they rotate independently around their individual origin, and that is the object origin. So that's cool. Over here you can switch between wireframe, solid, material, and rendered, but since there's no materials yet, let's just stick with wireframe or solid. You can also just hit Z to cycle between those two. That's about it for this, for the 3D viewport, at least. There's a couple things up here like snap to grid. I think this is like nonlinear something. I've always wanted to know what that does. But so if you know, in the comments, please. X-ray. That's cool. I didn't know about that. So that's helpful. Great. Now, what about this column? We haven't talked about this over here, and there's there's a lot of stuff over here. I mean, oh my goodness. That's something, I don't know. But this is important. So this is your render engine. Eevee is the first render that came out with Blender, and it's pretty good. It's fast. It's very fast. You want to get fancy, you can go with cycles. But yeah, stick with the Eevee for now, I would say. Dimensions. So this is like the dimensions of the picture that you would render. So you have a camera. If you hit number pad 0, you'll go right to the camera. Now I don't have a full keyboard, so I can't. But that's what it looks like with your camera. Okay. And then that's basically what the rendered picture is going to look like if it wasn't in X-ray mode. Yeah, like that. And if you change this, obviously it changes your camera because that's what's taking the picture. Okay. And you can change your aspect ratio and all this interesting stuff. So that's cool. Unless you're doing an animation, I would just render pictures. If you do render animation, it'll render all these frames. So I usually do like the first 4 frames if I have different camera locations, if I've animated the camera. I can show you how to do that later videos. I don't usually do much with this, or this really. You can set a background image if you want, but I don't think it shows up in the render. Shading for the world, I don't use it much. This is important. This is, it shows you any transforms that you do to an object and allows you to sort of fine tune them. So that's cool. Yeah, I think you can do stuff with tracking and other stuff, but I don't really know. Modifiers we'll come back to. That's very important. That's for particle effects. You don't really mess with that. Physics effects, yeah, you don't need that. Constraints, not really sure. This vertex groups is good. Now let's say you have a bunch of vertex in a very complex model, and you want to be able to select them without having to, it's very tedious to go and get at each one of them. So once you select them, you can actually add them to a group, and then you can assign them, and then you can deselect them or select them, whatever you like. So it can be very helpful, save you a lot of time. This is material, and basically the material affects how it's rendered, how it looks. If it's shiny and reflective, or if it's more of like a fabric or like a wall or whatever. You can all set that in there, and you usually go to the shading tab and do all of that with a bunch of fancy nodes. So I can show you a little bit of that later maybe. But basically what you're going to want to worry about now is the modifiers and how to use these modifiers to make what you want to make, and as well as the different loop cuts and grabbing stuff and modifying cubes and blah 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 to make your model. So the most important modifiers that I use are going to be the array modifier. The array modifier is pretty cool. It allows you to make a bunch of copies of your object without actually having to copy all of them. And they're pretty simple. You can use you can do two cool things. Okay, obviously it's a simple array. If you were to just rotate this, you can make it nice and straight, but whatever, we know that. What you don't know, what you might not know, is you can do cool stuff. If you choose object offset, I like to choose merge because it merges the stuff together if they need to go together. But if not, like if you're making a cable, you want to hit merge. But if you're not, I'm just messing around. I don't need to. I can choose object offset. And once I do that, this object's location is going to change the array. So if I rotate it, the array will rotate. If I move it, the array moves. So it's really quite fun, and you can actually hide it and then just move this around. You can add more. If we rotate it a little less. Oh, I forgot to mention, to pan up and down, you would normally scrolling in and out is zooming, but if you hold shift, it goes up and down, control, left and right. And it's a cool little modifier. You know, you can do all sorts of interesting stuff with it. Now, what else can it do? Well, let's say I have a curve, and where is it? That's weird. Okay, Shift A to add a curve. Bezier, fine. Scale it up a bit. And we'll make it a little curvier. It doesn't like a nice curve. Okay, so now what if we wanted the boxes to follow the curve, right? So we would just add we have to go to fit type, fit curve, select the curve, but we're not done. That just makes an array for the curve. We actually have to deform modifier with a curve, and we simply give it the curve. Here you go, and boom, you know, it'll follow the curve, and we can modify the curve. We can do all sorts of crazy things, and it will take the shape of the curve, which is pretty fun. So yeah, that's how I made the cable. Now it is going down, and that's because the starting orientation of the cubes is not in the same as the curve. But if you align it properly, it will line up. So that's that. Those are curve modifier and the array modifier. The Boolean modifier is another good modifier to have, to use. It basically, well, you know what a Boolean, right? I mean, it's pretty simple. So if we apply a Boolean modifier from one of these to the other, and we hide the modifier, we see we have a nice, interesting cutout. And that's from the Boolean operation. That is a difference operation. Now we can do a union, and we can get both of them, or an intersect I feel like would be more interesting. Yeah. Fascinating. It's an odd amount of symmetry that I wasn't expecting. Okay. Yeah, so Boolean modifiers are pretty cool. You hit apply, and then don't forget to delete your modifier, and if you need. And then you can import that into whatever, you know, other thing you're using, and that would be good. Because if you have all this in like your main file project, whatever, it's not gonna, there's gonna be too much stuff going on, and you know, you'll hit Alt H and you won't be able to see anything. You know, so I like to work in a separate file, make my models, and then put all the models once they're done into another file, and then that's where I render everything and do the textures and shading. Mirror modifier. Oh, I got to talk about that. That's a great one. So how the mirror modifier works is whatever is hold on. So right now I think it's mirroring on the x-axis, but if I hit in object mode, if I hit Control A and I apply all transforms, boom. Okay, so this is how I like to explain it. The object has its this is its origin, the object's origin, and the mirror modifier works off of the object origin. So if you are applying a modifier and you want the modifier to work on the world origin, you hit Control A in object mode while the object is selected, and you can apply all transforms, and that will reset the object's origin to the origin of the world. If you don't want that, well, then you sort of have to figure it out. But it's important to note that the mirror modifier operates on the object's origin and not the world origin. And you can do X, Y, and Z. So lots of cool stuff. And And then you can go into edit mode and do interesting things. So it's all symmetric X, Y, and Z. That's the mirror modifier. It can be very helpful if you are working on symmetric parts, and it reduces, time. Subdivide surface is pretty cool. Let's do it on this one. So we can add a modifier of subdivision surface. And I like to add a couple, make it nice and smooth. Oh, so the viewport is really the one you want to modify. Wow, that is something, huh? So you can see, like, what you can do is you can stack these modifiers on top of each other simultaneously, right? So like, you can do a mirror modifier, a subdivision modifier, blah blah blah, and you can get really quite intricate parts from them. So definitely experiment with, stacking these modifiers and seeing what you can, because you can do an array, you can do a subdivision, you could do a mirror, you could do all of them at once. So, and then the order is what then becomes important. If you apply one modifier first, so that's why there's these arrows here. You can move them. So if you want that one to be first, you can move it down, etc. So, yeah. What other modifiers are there? Solidify can be good, actually. So, like, let's say you have another cool thing you can do. Like, let's say you want to just get the vertex information from this top face, right? So you can select the top face. You can say Shift D, and then escape, and then press P. And what that does is that makes a parent from the selection. So then you would go out of edit mode and select that, which is now its own object. Go back into edit mode, and then you can extrude it. Oops. Stand by. Extrude, and boom, now you have two different objects. Well, they should be different. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, I'm a little baffled why that's not I have no idea. So normally when you do that, it makes the object its own thing. That is weird. So I'm going to copy that over there. P selection. There, see? It is its own thing. So, okay, I'll get back to you on that. It's very weird. It's not usually how it's supposed to work. But what else is there? That's about it, I would say. Solidify is good if you have something that has no mass to it and you want to make it solid, like thicken it. For instance, this object right here, if we solidify that, it should just increase its thickness. Yeah, so that can be helpful. Now, it doesn't work on singular lines. It has to be like a strip of 0 width, like, and it will work. But if you have just a line, it won't work. I wish it would, but that's not how it works. That can be nice if you make like a drawing that you want to, or like some text that you want to be thick. Adding text is really easy too. Like you would just go to object mode, text, and you can say edit mode, hello. And then what you have is basically a text object. So to convert it to a mesh, you would Alt-C to convert a mesh from curved text, and then you have vertices that you can do you can extrude it or apply a thickness, the solidify modifier, you know, and then you could put that on a object and do a Boolean to get like a imprint of text, you know. Yeah, I mean, I think that's really most of the modeling stuff. I mean, you can get a lot of really fancy stuff with this stuff, but what I showed you is really a lot of the basics that I use to make almost all the models that I do for like 3D printing and the figures. So hope that helped. I tried to make it as concise as I could. Like, subscribe, comment. I want to know what you guys think, what you want to hear about. If you want to hear the second, where we go into what do you want to hear, like, you know, shading, rendering, more modeling techniques, let me know. All right, that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Have a great one. Bye-bye.